Hello, friends. My name is Charmaine, and here at To a Child, we talk about spirituality and mental health and how they work together. Today, I really didn't know what I was going to talk about at all. Had nothing in my brain. I struggled to come up with some sort of topic to come to talk about, and I just couldn't think of anything. So, today, I sat and I struggled with just trying to get myself outside of this sort of dark, um, alone feeling that I have. And in past, I've had this feeling many times, and it usually comes when I'm basically planted. I'm a seed. I'm planted, and you have to spend time alone and in the dark before that seed is going to grow. And before it does grow, you go through this period of ugh. So I was kind of feeling this, and I couldn't think of any thoughts that were keeping me hung up on it. So I mean, I literally could not get out of bed. I had to do opposite action. So I told myself, this is not serving me. And I put on some shoes and I went outside and I spent a good portion of time outside today. Here in South Georgia, it's nice and sunny and beautiful. And like high 60s today, so not too cold, not too warm either, though. I went out and I cleaned my garage because I just moved some stuff around in there and wanted to sweep out a lot of the grass that had got pulled in or blown in. And I took apart some things that I didn't need in there anymore and got those spaces cleaned up. And then I decided that I didn't wanna come inside just yet because the sunshine was nice, and we all need sunshine on us that we're basically kind of more complicated plants. We need water and we need sunshine. So, while I was out there, I decided to go ahead and start planting seeds. I have this nice big tray and all of my little pots that I've collected over the years, and I just started putting all the seeds in and getting them labeled and getting it watered. I had bought myself a blueberry plant recently, and I went ahead and put that into a patio pot till it's good enough to go into the ground. I planted lettuce up on the patio. I planted my spices up on the patio. And while I was doing all this planting, I was thinking about ways I could treat myself kinder by growing the things that I'm growing. While I was planting my pickling cucumbers, I thought of how good it's going to feel to harvest those and then share them with my friends because I do make pickles and boy, are they interesting. So interesting that it makes normal pickles seem really weird. And I look forward to that particular crop. I planted the tomatoes thinking about how hard it is to grow tomatoes, and that this year I'm going to do something a little different. And that, I was putting this intention out there that my tomatoes were going to grow differently this year. Um, I moved here to South Georgia from Michigan in 2020, and the growing season had already begun. It was already summer by the time I got here and hot summer here. So I didn't really grow anything. 2021 was the first year I actually grew any or tried to grow anything. And I stuck it smack dab out there in the middle of the sun, tried to water it as much as possible. And I tell you what, I fried all those plants. It was a learning process. So 2022 growing season, I moved the garden to a more shaded area back at the back end of the yard and behind the garage. Well, not behind the garage, at the side of my garage. And it gets adequate enough shade and sun that all of the plants do grow back there. But I saw that I didn't do as well with tomatoes as I wanted to do. For whatever reason, I can grow bell peppers, but boy, were they super teeny. And then the squash burned up by May. The the for whatever reason, I had a pumpkin plant and I didn't even buy pumpkin seeds, so that was kind of weird. I think it came from a seed packet quality control that one slip by. Um, golly, I just it was a learning experience in 2022. Now it is 2023. And 2022, I didn't quite realize that my growing season is vastly different than Michigan. Michigan, I have to wait until well after Mother's Day to plant anything. Otherwise, it's going to snow and everything's going to die. And so now that I'm here in Georgia, I can actually start growing January to February here. Now, we did go through a really big freeze a couple weeks back, and now it's feeling like the weather is sort of normaling out. I'm kind of hoping there is no other freeze. However, everything can come in the house. And I went ahead and planted all the seeds that I'm thinking I'm going to need. I'm working on that plan for the garden of what is going to grow best where. I am really kind of differently prepared for this season than last season. And since I'm starting a little earlier, hopefully I'll get more yield from my garden and hopefully be able to can maybe some things so that I am having stuff from my garden throughout. Now, I know I just shared a whole bunch of gardening with you, and you're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. So, well, while I was out there gardening, I was thinking that, you know, our brains are kind of like a garden if you think about it. What we think about really grows. If we are thinking negatively, that tends to grow in our brain. If we're always worried, those worries seem to grow if we don't know how to stop them from growing. Our brains are like a sponge, and the words that we use in our own head will grow and potentially fester if we're not thinking of very good things. I've had to switch a lot of my thinking. I've had to monitor a lot of my thoughts to make sure that the things that I'm thinking aren't compounding and making things worse in my brain. Um, in the past, I had been really stuck in a lack sort of thinking, that lack mindset, that man, I don't have this. Man, I really wish I had my own house. Gosh, I wish I had my own space that was away from maybe these certain people. There were a lot of stages through life where my thoughts were very negative. And when something would happen within my environment, my thoughts would be negative and turn inward on me, and they would spiral me into a black hole of darkness where I was just very alone, very isolated, and sometimes felt like I really didn't want to be around anymore. Now, when that happened, I had to start keeping a thought diary. When I first went into therapy, that was one of the first things I had to do was start to keep a thought diary. And back then it was really, really hard because I had so many thoughts at any given time going through my head, and most of them negative, that I just couldn't get to the point that I could unwind them. It was very difficult. So, and now in where I'm at in my therapy, I don't have nearly as many automatic negative thoughts as I used to. I've worked on a lot of my automatic negative thoughts and found different ways to look at things so that I'm not wording them negatively to myself and then unconsciously perpetrating that negativity in my brain. What you think about is really important. And what you feed your brain, that means the stuff coming in is very important too. Are you filling it with TV time? Are you filling it with video game time? Are you filling it with study time? Are you filling it with working through your problems? Are you filling it with just telling yourself how worthless you are over and over and over again? At one time, I told myself over and over again that I was worthless, that I had no worth, that my only worth was whatever I could do for other people. And that's a very people pleasing way to look at the world. And so now that I'm looking at the world a little differently, I'm not over people pleasing. I'm actually more or less trying to get myself to the point that my thoughts are always good, that my thoughts are positive, and that when I think something negative, I automatically challenge that thought and give myself positives about myself to reinforce the fact that I am worth something. Now, keeping those thought diaries back when I first started were hell because like I said, so many thoughts, I could sit and write my thoughts down constantly and never stop writing in this diary. And that's what made it so difficult. I really had to get to the point that I was working on emotional regulation, that I could really tone down those thoughts, really start peeling them apart and taking away the negativity that I saw in me that wasn't exactly my negativity. It had come from another source and it was kind of put on me and I needed to remove it. Well, the thought diaries did work. The thought challenging does work. And now I'm in a place where when I plant my plants, I'm thinking of the good things I want coming up. And that, every time I water these plants, I'm going to be thinking about the nourishment that I'm going to receive from whatever vegetables I am growing, or the spices, or the beauty I'm going to get to enjoy from the flowers that I plant. And, I don't let it go through my mind that the seeds aren't going to germinate because that's what I did last year. I worried and worried and I mother henned them and I started late. And, I really wasn't conscious of what was going on. And what I needed was that presence. I needed to have that mindfulness and that presence to really come to that place where I could understand that this is what I'm doing is I'm getting ready. I'm sowing the seeds so that I can, care for the plants and then take the harvest from it and be abundant with it. Now, like I said, our brains are sponges, but just because maybe you already think kind of negatively, don't poo poo it. You can change that. It just takes a little effort on your part to challenge those negative thoughts, to catch them and challenge them. And even if you don't catch them the first time they happen, eventually when you catch them, you untangle those thoughts and you make a new thought that is more accurate because our thoughts are not fact. So that's kind of what I thought while I was outside planting. Now, while I was out there planting, I was also grounding because while you're working with the earth, it's one of the most calming things that I have experienced was gardening and then the joy of seeing your plants grow. Um, I know I was just texting with my daughter, and she had mentioned that she wanted to grow some plants or wanted some plants. And even that kind of got me excited because then I thought, ooh, maybe I should go and plant a few more of these different kinds of things so that she can come and take some plants from me as well. And then I get to give some plants that maybe will nourish somebody other than just me. And I think that's like a fantastic thought to have. Always remind yourself that love is the way to go. Love grows things, hate stunts things. And so always try to have that love on the first foremost part of your mind. Gardening isn't for everybody. This is just something that soothes me. And this is also something that really helps me with my spirituality because spirituality is very much a cycle. And if you plant a seed, that is very much a cycle. You know, you start from germination and then you end up with a plant that maybe fruits and then you harvest. And then maybe you get to start again. It's something that affirms the cycles in the world to me. It's there in nature to show me what I should just expect in my life. There's always going to be the planting of a seed, the growth, and then the harvest. Like I said in the very beginning of this podcast, lately I've been feeling very, very planted. I'm grounded, but it's dark and there's nothing happening, or so it may seem. But that may not be the case. It is, for me, springtime. So it is time to be a seed and to be planted. Sometimes you need that little bit of time to yourself to really understand what you want to grow next within yourself. I'm always trying to grow in better and different ways and try to become that better person. And so I leave you with my thoughts from the gardening and from being outside in the sunshine. I hope that you can find a little bit of sunshine in your life and maybe think about starting your gardens in the future. If you're up north, maybe you got to wait to plant. But if you're down in the southern end and you have the ability to plant, go ahead and maybe try and plant some seeds. If you're not planting seeds in the ground, try to plant some seeds in your mind, some seeds that are good ones, and then grow them. Grow them so they're big and beautiful flowering ideas or even flowering healing. Growth is always a process and it's going to continue throughout our lives. So we might as well get used to that little uncomfortable darkness before we germinate and then finally pop out of the ground to feel the sunshine on us. I know the sunshine's coming for me. I felt a little bit of it outside today. And just that little bit of time made me feel like I grew a little bit more. And I'm always challenging myself to just try to become a little bit better tomorrow. If you are struggling and you're in that dark place and really feel like you're not coming out, never hesitate to try to speak to somebody. And if there isn't somebody in your life that you feel you can trust to speak to, never hesitate to reach out to the crisis hotline. You can reach them at 988, and they are there to help. As always, take what resonates and leave the rest behind. You can find me on my socials linked below. Also, remember, I'm still looking for potential podcast partners. Anybody who wants to have a conversation about anything in the spiritual community or the mental health community, since they really do both go together. I'd love to have that conversation. This is Charmaine from To Which Isle, and until next time, light and love, my friends.